Welcome back to Cross-Cultural Communications. Again, I'm Sean Watts, and we're following this bit.ly/CCC outline for all class materials. You can see not only our class materials, but a lot of other extra files in here. We've already gone through the introduction, and we've talked about chapter 2, which I thought was incredible, saying the universal system. How can systems be understood or evaluated? So that was a great thing. I encourage all of you guys to check into that. Now we're talking about comparing the East-West cultures. And I'd like to draw your attention to the end of this. Again, it's all in here, week 3. If we go through that, you will see there's class activities, there's the PPT that I'm going to be going through, and then there's also several other files related to this, several other videos related to this. This video up here, we haven't talked about completely. If we can go through and understand that this weekend. So next class will be a holiday, but afterwards, in the end of next week, we can talk a little bit more about this. That would be good. Have any of you seen other videos talking about cultural differences and culture shock details?
I watched about the study difference between the culture, how they focus on the study.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Which video or which detail did you watch?
Culture differences between the study.
Okay, the idea of the 2 million minutes, I believe, was the name of the video you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody else see some other videos? That one is discussed in our class details in the links that I provided. Here are 2 definitely talking about East-West video 1, East-West video 2. But what about down here? This area that I will make blue right now, there are many actual videos that a lot of Korean students and students in Korea seem to really like, because there is a university in North America that's kind of famous, and he just talks about some of the Korean cultural differences and differences between Korea and the rest of the world. I don't think he's ever been to Korea, but he's in love with the idea how Korea grew from nothing in the late 1960s and 70s to one of the world's biggest superpowers now. And he talks about that in very interesting ways. Same thing that I'm trying to talk about, but he's a lot more interesting. So watch some of those videos. They're short videos. They're very interesting. I encourage you guys to watch that during your break and during your Chuseok break next week. Hopefully you can find some more details to share with class. I'm going to go through and summarize part of what we talked about in chapter 2. Hopefully you guys have that textbook. Again, let me just make sure you guys can see this stuff. You should be able to see one. Here we go. Here's one of the videos is showing the book. This is Intercultural Business Communication. It's a new book, and in chapter 2, there's many really interesting ways describing countries. What's a country compared to another country with religion? What's a country compared to another country with politics or with education, with economy and business? So if you're looking through those things, that would be great. We talked about the economic isms, the difference between socialism, communism, Nazism, capitalism, with jokes, but it's also talked about it in class. On the week 2 slide, we talked about this cultural difference. One student said that you saw this. What did you find most interesting with this video? Anybody that saw this video, what did you find most interesting related to this video talking about how people do things differently?
They talk about how they focus, how many times they focus on their study and how they take it seriously.
Okay, can you give an example of how one country is different than another country? Which country takes it seriously, which country doesn't?
For example, USA, they are so study as a like as a funny things to do, like don't pay too much attention or don't worry too much. But the Chinese, compared to Chinese, I mean, but the Chinese, they are focused very much, and they um, take it not easy and do it very in a stressful way. So they are so worried about their like future career and related that kind of stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about, for example, is in school in China and Korea, most of the students are focused on the STEM focus, the science, technology, engineering, and maths. Similar in India, but in North America, there's the Common Core. Gwen, do I get to pick on you? You're from United States, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Would you like to defend your country?
I
And this whole
mean,
idea, have you seen this video, first of all, Gwen?
no, I haven't.
So if I summarize it, there is an American guy. His job is just doing international business, and he noticed when he was traveling around the world that people are different, and so he started to check into how people are different, specifically related to his kids. He had two young kids, and he wanted to find out how kids in India or how kids in China are so different. And so he started studying into them, and he identified that for high school in India is basically the same amount of time as high school in China or almost anywhere in the world. And so he identified a simple thing. If you are in high school for the same amount of time, which equals about 2 million minutes, that's how many years and days and minutes you're in high school, how many of those minutes do students in each country study? And identified in China and Korea, it's about the same, almost 600,000 minutes students spend studying. What do we mean by that? For example, in the class, you will study basically the same amount almost anywhere, except in some countries, you may study for 6 days a week, or especially in high school, you may study 7 days a week. And I'm not just talking about in a regular school. There are, like even my kids, I'm Canadian, but my kids here, they're, I guess now part Korean. They wanted to do the same thing as their classmates. So they tried to join extra schools before school starts. And then they go to regular school, and after school's finished, they go to another school to study something. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, they go to another school, especially just before they go to university. And so that's how you got up to almost 600,000 minutes of studying in China and in Korea. And in India, it's similar, 422,000 versus in United States. This American guy identified that American students are studying 302,000 minutes. And when they do study in China, similar in India and in Korea, most of the students are very, very seriously focused on memorizing text, memorizing math text, memorizing science text, things like that. I thought people were joking when I first came to Korea, and they were telling me that they actually memorized a dictionary. I thought, no way, like I couldn't remember one word definition coming from Canada, but they literally memorized dictionaries, and not just regular dictionary, but dictionaries in foreign languages too. Versus when I had a scholarship to the States, I was able to take a skiing class and a swimming class. But there are many good things about it also. Would you like to describe your education or the education you might be aware of, Gwen?
Okay, so definitely not as studious as Korea, like at all. American kids mostly don't care that much. Like not enough to go to extra school after school. That's too much. But I was considered like a really studious student. Like I spent all my time doing homework and stuff. I didn't have a social life, but I still did not study as much as Korean kids do. Like nowhere near.
Did you ever hear of schools offering credit or having class to study cheerleading or football or swimming or scuba diving or basketball or sports classes?
I mean, not at my school, honestly.
No? Cooking classes
Oh yeah,
or
we did
some
have a
kind
cooking
of art?
class. I do remember that. We
Okay.
did have a cooking class.
Those types of classes are not usually that popular in several other countries. So that's one difference. But there are many, many differences. I'd like you guys to focus on those differences, especially starting today. I'm surprised we have 23 people participating in our group today. It's the beginning of a very long weekend. Many students skip Thursday and Friday classes to go home for this long weekend. I had students in my last class earlier this morning participating in class on the train. We can see the train window going by stations and stuff like that. It's really cool, but they're still focused on studying somewhat. So that's one thing. How is a culture difference related to next week? The Thanksgiving is generally the holiday we're talking about. Next week is generally the Thanksgiving holiday in Korea. What is the Thanksgiving holiday like in North America? Ali Akbar, could you guess? Do you have any idea what a Thanksgiving in North America is like?
Is it literally the Thanksgiving Day? Eating
Oh.
turkey?
Okay, eating turkey. Good. So what does that mean? What does the Thanksgiving Day mean to you?
After the harvesting of a year of the agriculture and celebration of that.
Yeah, traditionally it started at the farmers type of focus when you had the most crops. Yes, but in Korea it's the same thing. This whole idea of Chuseok is supposed to be related to this farming thing, but something tells me most students here don't do very much farming in Korea. So it's interesting to talk about those differences. Do you notice a difference in your country Thanksgiving compared to North American Thanksgiving? Ali Akbar, where are you from?
Me?
Sure, where are you from? And
South Korea.
okay, and what do you usually do for your Chuseok or your Thanksgiving holiday?
I just visit my cousins and greet with them. Nothing is special, I think.
So it's basically the same thing that I experience in Canada. You visit Canada, so you visit relatives. Usually you have lots of special food for getting together with relatives. What about you? Unoujin Batsengel. I apologize for saying your name wrong. Unoujin, whereabouts are you from?
I'm from Mongolia.
Mongolia. Do you have a Thanksgiving in Mongolia?
No, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
Are you aware of the details in North America or in Korea?
I don't know that much because we don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
Okay, one of the reasons why I was talking about it is we have many international students in this class, and this is one of the biggest holidays of the year in Korea, and yet most of you international students, and probably including me, will be basically left out. Most of the Koreans will leave work environment, leave their colleagues, leave other students, and just go back home. And the foreigners, some businesses will be closed, some activities will be closed, and you are left to have a lot of free time to do things. So I would suggest all of you network together, find out what you guys can do together, since most of the Korean participants may disappear from being around you next week. Arfin, Uno Ujin, Ali Akbar, Rosie, everybody, be aware that next week is going to be a quiet week, and Some students might not even come back after the holiday finishes on the Wednesday, but we're supposed to have class then. Be aware of those details. Chapter 2 also talked about comparing education details, the learning concepts, and how they're different. For example, we just heard from Gwen, anybody can get into college in the United States. Malaysians were marking on how easy it is to get into American colleges and universities. Similar, before I even finish this, the sentence, in my first university, I had 2 older brothers and an older sister that went to university before me. And I heard many, many horror stories about how hard it was at university. So many people were failing, getting basically kicked out of university. So I specifically went to a university that was one of the smallest in Canada, and it was in the French area that had the lowest drinking age, so I could party and drink with some of the other people to try to develop some relationships. In my university, half of all students were Malaysian, because the Malaysian government, they recognized Malaysian university and the school system wasn't the world's best back then, so they sent, with government support, a lot of their Malaysian citizens to study in Canada and then come back and share some of that education with other people around them. So Malaysians remarked on how easy it is to get into a university in Canada and in the United States, much more so than the unsavourable, the unattractive schools that have the British style. Gwen, do you know many people that went to university in United States? And my specific question is, how many people do you know have been able to get into university? And then what % of people actually graduate university in the United States? Do you know those details?
I don't, but I like all the friends I had from high school, I know they got into a university. The actual percentage and stuff for the whole nation.
In Canada, the textbook is actually talking about some of those details. Let me show you some of those, and I'll talk about it mostly with Canada. Just part of the review. We started talking about this last class, but in Canada, the provinces are responsible for the educational system. However, all provinces provide free and compulsory education for people up to 16 years old. The literacy rate is 99%. If we go on, it says that the government subsidizes university education, helps pay for students' tuition, but 40% of the population seeks university and training after high school. Of those 40% that apply to university, more than 80% usually fail in their first year, which is the opposite of in Korea. In Korea, most people are not successful getting into the university they want to, but if you do get into a university in Korea, most people never flunk out. Does anybody want to describe what you think of university in your hometown? Is it in your home country? Is it similar or different in any other countries? If I repeat, in Canada, most people can apply and get into a Canadian university, not all universities, but they can get in. But then after you do get in, those teachers will fail most students and kick you out. When I started my very first class at university, it was a chemistry class, and the teacher said, look and introduce yourself to the student on your right, then look and introduce yourself to the student on the left, because probably within 3 months, they will not be here anymore. Even before the class finishes, they're going to quit university. And I was like, he's joking, but that's the reality. That's what happened.
I would say something in maybe for Germany, because we mainly focus here on like US, Canada, and a comparison to the Asian, like to some Asian countries. So in Germany, it's basically like we have 3 ways to basically learn a job, if you want to say so. One would be normal university. Then there are like universities of applied sciences, which are a bit more practical, which I am currently doing my master's degree in. And then there is like so universities mainly focus on like mostly for science, mostly for research and development, and also offer some courses in like very theoretical fashion. and also like engineering stuff. So, but you can do like a more practical term in engineering stuff also on the universities of applied sciences. And also, and this is pretty unique in the world, I guess, which only I think Austria shares with us and parts of Switzerland, I guess, where they have like training on the job, if you want to call it. So you don't have to go to university because, like studies showed pretty much that not everyone wants to go to university and not everyone is favorable to having like a theoretical knowledge of a job or something. So we have a system of like learning a job, which dates, I think, 150, 200 years back, which offers you the variety of like learning a job in a company, getting paid for it, have like half-time training on the job and half-time education in a school, which is normally kind of related to your job, for example, bakery or baker or butcher or technician for cars and so on. So normally that lasts about 3.5 to 4 hours to 4 years. And so you have like different branches, and it's normally very practical, but you can have a very good job afterwards without without studying at any part of your life. So I guess this is like one good way for many people who are like after school or after like the 10th grade, I'm leaving school and I just do my traineeship and then have a good job which I enjoy for the rest of my life, which I can actually live from very, very well. Like, depends on the job, but normally you're fine with it. So this is like also craftsmanship or something is also like a training. It's not a thing you're learning in university.
Okay, Solmin Kim, you told me that you're Canadian. Did you understand what he was saying, how the German educational system is different than the Canadian system and how it's different than the Korean system? Solmin Kim, did you understand?
Yeah, I understand that as in Western education, they guarantee more like opportunity and they provide like real experience to students rather than teaching from textbook.
Not all places. There are many places that don't have those programs. I forget what you guys call those programs in Germany, but in Canada, they're usually called co-op programs, cooperative. So it's the classroom, the university cooperates with companies, and the students study for a little while in the classroom with the books, and then a little while with the actual company doing the real work, as you were saying.
So we have like maybe if I just, sorry to interrupt, Professor, like we call it an Ausbildung, which kind of translates to 3.5-year training or traineeship on the job, or I don't think there is like a term in English, but we also have what you just described, which is basically a cooperation where the university has a cooperation or a company like, for example, Siemens or Bosch, like, or Audi, VW, and like all these big companies have cooperations with universities, normally in their hometown or something, where people actually can train on the job half the time and the other half of the time work on the job, and actually do in this time, most of them do like also get a degree in this traineeship program, which they are assigned to, for example, as a mechanic, if they study, for example, mechanical engineering. So, but this is separate to this whole traineeship branch, which involves no university at all. So that's kind of the differentiation between like training on the job and doing like this cooperative thing between a company and studying. So you can kind of select what you want to do. Like both pay you a wage, normally monthly, which you can live from. Actually, very good. So yeah. That's basically like the main difference. But it's pretty unique, like I said. Like some countries have some of these jobs. For example, a sushi master goes kind of through the same training but longer. Or a noodle, like there is some called noodle master, I think, in China. Like some jobs are traditional, and you have to go through this traineeship and for very, very long time before you can call yourself a master. Like 10 years for sushi, I think it is for a sushi master. But like in Germany, you have it nearly for every job. You have kind of something similar without studying.
Okay, what about the other aspect? I would like you guys to focus on understanding how countries have different universal aspects. Like everybody understands education is important, but well, I think everybody in the planet will probably have mothers and fathers saying education is super important and I want to give my kids the best education. That value of education or that intensity of education is very different. Small little details, like in Korea, the Confucian culture, which is the same in Japan, the same in China, they usually say you have your king or your emperor at the top. The top government is the head, and then you have the professors, your teachers. Like Confucius is supposed to be the head. And then many other people are underneath that. Versus in North America, I think teachers are not at the top of the totem pole. Do we have another Canadian or American? Would you guys like to tell the class how high in the hierarchy would you classify teachers? Anybody from North America? What are you? Maria Santos. I think I heard you were from Mexico. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
How respected are teachers in Mexico? For example, when young children are thinking, what do they want to do or who do they respect the most?
There's a lot of respect toward teachers. We actually used formal language when we talk to our teachers. Sometimes they tell us, oh, you can talk to me at a first name basis. But for me, that's just, it's kind of weird because they're still my professors, kind of, my superiors. So yeah, we do respect them a lot.
Good. So it's similar to the East Asian, the Confucian culture. Have you heard about the hierarchy of teaching in the United States or Canada?
Yeah, I actually was an exchange student in the US for a year, so I'm familiar with it.
Can you share any
yeah,
stories?
Oh, well, I didn't know about this, but when I got there the first time, but to our teachers, we used to call them by their last name, and we would say, "Oh, Mr. Watts," for example, and we would talk to them in that way. So that's the thing I remember the most, and we would always be respectful to them.
Okay, that's good. You were at some good schools. Where I grew up, most students, they went to the regular public school. If you're lucky or if you had a little bit of money, you would go to generally a Catholic school or a private school, which you had to pay for versus the public schools, which were free. And in the free schools, I think you've all seen TV shows where students may be going in and out in some rough areas where there's security guards going in and out, and teachers are not given the same amount of respect as a doctor or as a lawyer or engineer, some things like that. Versus, yes, the Confucian style, and as we just heard, the Mexican style, usually it's a little bit different. So please be aware of there's many ways that people think and value different things. It's not just the communication style. So when you are communicating, how about we have a Korean student? What about Hwang Wang-gi? Can you hear me? Can you tell me what is one aspect of communication in Korea related to Chuseok? How do you communicate with a teacher, or if you're working in a company, how do you communicate with a boss, especially in Chuseok time?
Professor,
Yes.
I'm not a Korean, I'm a Chinese.
Okay. Same thing for you. How do you usually communicate? Because you do have the similar festivals, like you have the New Year's festival and you'll have this fall time festival, which are pretty big. in your countries. How do you usually communicate with your teachers during this time?
Communicate with my teachers during this festival.
For example, gifts. In Canada, you're not allowed to give gifts to your boss or to your teacher. Is there some sort of gifts that you usually give people?
Yeah, in China, that there's a festival called Teachers' Day, and usually on this festival, the students will just present some small gifts like a flower, like just a card to just show their respect for their teachers. And I think it is important communication for them to chat with the teachers.
Okay, good. What about Kyunggan Jung and Mijin Jung? Do you guys know of a special Korean characteristic of Chuseok, especially popular with graduate students? Do you know anybody that's in a graduate program, like in a master's program or a PhD program, and what usually happens when you have this big national day with your teacher or with your boss if you're working in a company?
I think before maybe 10 years ago, they provide many gifts, maybe Korean food, beef, or other fruits. But now I think, excuse me, I think it's permitted by law to give public officer or teacher. So it's permitted now. So I think we don't do many gifts. We don't present. We don't give many gifts now.
Okay. You are saying something, I'm not going to say right or wrong, but I'm going to point out, just to make it clear, what you were saying is the government has made it illegal to give gifts, to give like a bag of apples or a box of oranges to your teachers or to your boss, especially for in schools. Why did the government make these laws? To ban students from having, you used to have to give gifts to your teacher. It's because so many people were doing it that it was making a financial hardship for almost all families, especially families that really needed the education the most to grow out of poverty. In North America, I don't think there's any day where you're expected to give gifts to a boss or a teacher. There are clear laws that I think almost everybody knows about those things. And if somebody's asking for those things or expecting those things, that person would get fired. Versus in Korea, yes, the government has made laws and it is illegal. I'm not going to be accepting gifts from you, but trust me, I know there are many, many, many professors that, especially in graduate school, they require them. If you don't show the proper respect and gifts to these people during this time of year, those professors may not allow you to graduate. I have, let's say, heard stories about how some people doing a PhD had to pay more than $100,000 as a gift to a professor in order to just have the professor sign agreement for that student to graduate. I'm not promoting that stuff. I'm just promoting the idea that there are different ways of doing things. And a different aspect is the idea of Socrates. Socrates was respected by many, many people for just asking questions, learning details. And that was respected in Confucianism, which is the main way in China, Japan, and Korea. And so the idea of focusing so much on education is really, really good. And as we heard in Germany, a lot of people are, they still respect education, but sometimes they'll respect the practice of work more than going through and learning about these famous theories and research. In Canada, there is respect for education, but it's definitely not as intense as the Confucian style. And there is the idea of co-op programs, but it's not also as intense as in Germany. So be aware of those differences. What else? So In addition to that, there's many other ways to rank people or to value people. Check their authority, check their power, check their property ownership, their income, lifestyle, occupation. Can anybody think of any other ways? How else can you rank people? How else do you value, not just rank, but value people? When you are born, you are brought up, and the people around you, whether it's your mother, your father, or your teacher, they will interact with you so that you will learn to value some things and not value other things. So what are some of those ways?
I would say their social status, their in general, like their intelligence, yeah, educational background kind of sums that up, but also like how well they behave with others, how nice they are towards you, and also how probably how honest they are. So most of these are not focusing on the character, I guess. Most of these are like things you either got by education or by actually working. But yeah, maybe etiquette and also I would say character. I mean, you don't select your friends, hopefully not, through like income, lifestyle, occupation, property ownership, and so on. If you
How do you mean by character? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I understand character, but how do you rank people based on character?
like I mean like if I meet a person, this person seems like very nice, or if I meet anyone, I normally don't ask in the first, or I talk to them and don't normally ask in the first place for property ownership, income, lifestyle, whatever. But like more like if I feel kind of related to this person on a personal feeling or a gut feeling or anything. So I would say the character of a person is also a way to categorize people. That would kind of tie with volunteer associations. I mean, like if someone is for example a monk or something, and he lives really the way of not having any property or not having any income and so on. So you probably respect that even more as a person coming from a religious point of view. So I would say they are very well regarded in society, even though they don't hold any power, property ownership, lifestyle, income, occupation, like probably the occupation, but that's how I would say that's another thing which should be taken into account.
The occupation. Is that what you were saying? What was the last thing they should take into account?
Occupation, and if you are yeah, like how a person behaves to other person. Is he really a good-hearted person? So that is, yeah, kind of with the occupation. I don't know. Like,
Okay. Kyungdong Jung, Daniel, will you be able to help the class? We have many people that are not Korean in our class. Understand how do we rank people? How is the Korean environment typically influencing kids when you're brought up? What do you do to learn how to value people or how to rank people? What do you look at? What are some of the main things that you want to say about the Korean way?
Well, I was thinking about some other basis how Koreans rank people, but
okay,
for that question, I have to think. For kids,
for example, at one of my first universities, I'm not going to say which university, but I had a boss that I really, really liked, but he was very traditional, and he was very well educated from top-ranked university internationally, and his family was very high up with the government and military. He was definitely very high in Korean society, but he did two things that really opened my eyes and taught me about how Korean culture is different than Canadian culture. The first thing, when we were interviewing students, just to get into the university, one of his first questions, always to almost any applicant, was, where do your parents live? What do your parents do? and he was trying to identify which area of Seoul are you from. If you're from like the good area of Seoul, just that alone, it's not, he didn't care about the neighborhood as far as being his neighbor or anything. What he was looking for is there was a belief that if you're from a certain neighborhood, you probably have family pushing you to go to some of the best Hagwons, so the best extra study schools. And if you're from some of the other environments outside of there, you probably don't have as good of an educational background. And that alone identified in his mind the students that were, you know, the highest ranked students or the lowest ranked students. The second thing that I noticed him do is we had an office manager that, although we were one big happy family in the department, it was a great environment. Our young person that was managing the telephone and the office files, things like that, they ended up buying a really fancy Hyundai Sonata. And Hyundai Sonata is not really that special, but this guy got a really fancy, a really good car that was better than the dean's car and the chair's car. And so that day, the guy came to school, he just got it, and he was showing the students, showing other people in the office, and he was glowing with pride. But at the end of the day, the management of the university talked to him. Basically, half an hour later, he had to exchange the car for a small little Kia Pride. Kyunggan Jung, can you explain what is a Kia Pride compared to a Hyundai Grandeur or a Sonata?
So Hyundai Grandeur is like, if I compare, it's like Audi R8, but when we say Kia Pride, it's like something like Mitsubishi or
so you don't like Mitsubishi. Anyway, the point is that a young person ended up getting a very, very fancy, very luxury type of vehicle that was more luxurious than the higher ranked people in the university. And so what I learned is that you're not supposed to make the higher ranked people look bad. And so if a younger person had a higher ranked car than you, that was bad. And so he wasn't forced to return it, but he was shown that he's making the executives and the senior management of the company or the organization look bad. So he returned it. That doesn't happen in Canada. I didn't know about those type of things. Another type of thing, some people said several years ago, I came to Korea over 25 years ago, and some Samsung employees and Daewoo employees back then, they had to buy a new car every 3 years. And of course, they had to buy one of their company cars. If they didn't, they wouldn't get the promotions. Those type of things, that property ownership. Another thing is, some people were encouraged to have a really, really fancy car and fancy clothes, even though their home is not fancy at all. Versus in Canada, usually you don't care about those things. And many times you don't talk about those things with other workmates. You're usually encouraged in Canada, you know, there's work is work and personal is personal. You separate work, personal things from professional things. And it's almost discouraged to go to bars with professional people. Versus in Korea, you almost have to. So there's a variety of ways that you rank people and value people. Anybody else want to give a different example? Samaj, yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to say that I wanted to add, there is another way how I think Koreans rank people is by their appearance. It's like in Korea, beauty is very important thing, and people judge people by their appearance a lot, and that's how usually these days they rank people, like, and like how beauty, like Instagram, SNS influencers, or comparing them to other even ordinary people, is that's how we rank. That's how system. That's how the environment is becoming changing.
So am I supposed to look very beautiful like I am today? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
How am I supposed to look in Korea to be valued and ranked?
So, I'll have no comments for that.
Come on. I'm not. I promise I'm not going to cry. I'll probably be pretty extreme in a good way.
For Koreans, I believe that women prefer men without mustache, without mustache and sorry.
Okay, keep going. What else? Is the beard okay?
Have to be taller, slim, or
Change
muscular.
that. I'll shave the rest after class. Okay, so we're aware of some of those details. And the idea of social stratification, there's many ways that you may have been brought up valuing things that are not valued in other areas. Like the idea, I was brought up, my father was a medical doctor, and I thought medical doctors were like the best in the world. But then I heard several other countries, medical doctors are basically earning almost minimum wage. And I was like, wow. And I realized that, that's what a doctor is supposed to do. They're supposed to just be helping others, not trying to get rich off of others. So be aware of some of those details, like the whole idea of educational background. What about cross-cultural communication with the idea of education now? Does anybody know about what Elon Musk promotes for educational background?
Dogecoin.
He's joking. That is a joke. Okay, Elon Musk talks a lot about certain things, like the joke Dogecoin. I want to make sure that's clear to the group. But what else? What does Elon Musk say is a requirement? Do you have to have a university degree?
Actually, no. Like he set up his own education facility, I guess, for his children and for some other children. So he doesn't believe in the normal way education works in the USA, or I guess many parts of Europe as well. But apparently he has some favor for like German engineering, from what like many newspapers tell. And I don't know, like he's basically saying if you're good on your job, then and you have a lot of and you don't have a master's degree and something, then if you can do the job well, he will hire you anyway. So yeah.
He has actually said several times that he thinks the educational system is a joke, especially how so many students are going into debt without actually learning something that they can use for their life. He is copying the Apple style of employment, where they're hiring people that can do a job. They're hiring people that can do specific type of programming. They don't care. They don't look at university degree or not. So that's one type of big difference. Another difference is the whole idea of the disruptive innovation. It might be interesting for you guys while you're learning whatever you're learning, just to be aware of disruptive innovation. Small little things that start, but then it grows so big, like the digital camera. When the digital camera started, it was a small little joke. It was a toy for people because they had thousands of dollars in these big expensive cameras that needed this special type of plastic film and special film paper. The whole Kodak company, one of the world's best, one of America's best companies, was focused on this film industry. And so the initial digital camera was a joke, but now digital cameras are so big, they're so much a part of every part of life, that Kodak company has disappeared. That's the disruptive innovation. And so why I'm talking about it with education, there are thousands of high schools and colleges and stuff that have closed in Korea just since the beginning of coronavirus. I believe it's like 113 schools have been closing every month on average recently. One reason is because of student age, but another reason is because there's so, especially with coronavirus and everybody's learning online, there's hundreds, thousands of new classes that you can watch online on YouTube for free now. people don't necessarily need to go to these top ranked universities anymore. They're very good for networking. They're very good for connecting with other people and getting into companies because of that, for sure. And many people say you can learn more here with the hands-on experience interacting with others. But that idea is disruptive innovation. Things are changing. Be aware of the cross-cultural communication and the environment around you, how other people value things differently at the same time as just that whole value of things is changing. Then occupational rankings. For example, in the United States, Supreme Court judge is the highest, versus in Japan and Korea, it's the government officers which are the highest. And then next, same in Canada, you have the medical doctors, which would be next, versus in Japan and Korea, I get there in university professors, supposedly. And it keeps going down this situation. So bankers are, there's many differences depending on where you are. Samaj or Ulubek, can you identify in your country what might be the top ranked type of job versus what are jobs that are not top ranked?
Well, I'm American, so according to your list, it says Supreme Court justices, but in this, I think it's kind of just depends on like the person and how they view certain jobs. I don't think in the States that there's really like, people really think like, oh yeah, this is like the top job everybody should have, at least to me. But, and I've never really talked to anyone that had that opinion. That's like, oh yeah, this job's the best job ever. Everyone, like this is the best job you could possibly get. So I guess it's just really circumstantial.
Okay, I don't think many young people hear the idea of buy your way out of things. In Korea, we have heard that some top companies and executives, they break the law, they don't file their taxes, they don't pay proper taxes, people find out about it. In other countries, you would go to jail. But in other countries, like in Korea, there have been famous stories about powerful people like that don't pay. The government finds out about them, but they didn't have to go to jail. They buy their way out of jail. And in the United States, I think there's several people that are aware that if, for example, a Supreme Court justice gets pulled over by a regular police officer, soon as that police officer realizes the driver of the car is a Supreme Court judge, or a Supreme Court judge is in that car, I think a lot of people would accept that police officer would change how they act. If it was just a regular young poor student driving the car, the policeman has a lot of power and can do almost anything they want. Versus if it was a Supreme Court judge, many times they would just say, you know, go on your way, have a nice day.
But isn't
go ahead.
Sorry, but isn't that super situational? Like I wouldn't say, speaking for more Western or speaking for Western cultures more in general, that like for example United States or European, like the European Union, there aren't really jobs. Maybe there are jobs who are favored by certain academic households, or maybe there are jobs favored for like people maybe with not that high of an education because they have a certain picture conveyed in the news and the media coverage, or based on their normal like medium income. But I would say like a list of occupational rankings or something's pretty hard to do, because you would basically have to ask every person in this country from every income class, and like I said, like Samar said, Supreme Court justices, or in Germany, like there would be the highest ranking judge comparable to that, which they hold a lot of power. But like I also never talked to someone who said like, okay, yeah, like this is my ultimate goal to be like a Supreme Court justice. It really depends on the background, family life situation, and like like for example, police officer, yeah, he holds much power. In Germany, it's a bit different, but like if he hears basically someone is an engineer, I think he wouldn't care, even though engineers are more highly regarded in society. than some other like professions. So for example, a banker or maybe of some sort. So I would say that's like pretty hard to do list on based on that.
Okay, this is based off of research, and the research is usually talking about the rankings related to power, usually. And even in Canada, top judges in Canada, many times they get preferential treatment. I know, for example, my father, he was a medical doctor, and perhaps it wasn't just because he had a card that said he was a medical doctor, but the fact that he saved the life of the head of the police, and he saved the life of the head of the military, and he saved the life of the head of so many other people, that he was really respected in the community. And so if we were paid over, if we were stopped for sometimes, as soon as the police officer found out about who he was, they would generally say, "Have a nice day." But if I was driving alone, I got the ticket. I think the point is, whether you recognize it or not, most groups of people will have a value system that you need to understand. When you're trying to communicate with people, if you think everybody has that same value, and if you think that the values in other areas are not important, you will have huge problems. You must understand people value things differently, and that impacts their communication. And this is just one way to recognize some of these values. Education is one way, occupation is another. There's many different ways. Overall, the HDI, the Human Development Index, this measures the purchasing power, the health, the education for the whole country and for women. There should be together, but this whole concept should be looked at the most, but most people have no idea what HDI is. Most people don't really look at these things until you're getting older and trying to find where is a place that you might be able to move to a different country to take care of your children or something. Most people don't look at this. Have any of you in class ever considered seriously the HDI outside of a class activity? I don't think usually you would. What they're saying here is, for example, Norway, Australia, Netherlands, they're number 1, 2, and 3 respectively on Human Development Index. So that saying is generally in some ways the best quality of life. Norway is number 1, Netherlands number 4 on inequality with Human Development Index. Australia didn't report. Overall was ranked number 4 and number 22 on inequality. So there are many things you can study, like wealth. I think we talked about this earlier in class, right? Zarnigar, do you remember talking about this in class?
Like you mean last semester?
No, in this class. I think we talked about that a little bit earlier on, the idea of how most people identify wealth as a value of people, and they think most people are relatively equal. There's a few people that are super rich, but if you zoom in on here, let me try to make this a little bit easier to see. You see there's this white line in the middle of this image. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see that on the screen? Yes, this white line here is many people think is the ideal situation of life versus the actual they think is not as ideal. They think poor people are not as wealthy. Ideally, everybody has about the same amount of money, but in reality, they understand poor people have much less money. If this is the poorest amount of people and everybody in a country, and this is the top, the red section is the top quarter of everybody in a country, they understand that the rich people have more. But the truth is that that top 1% has crazy amount of wealth. Everybody knows Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, 200 billion dollars of value versus half of the world generally don't have any assets, versus the top 8 families or the top 20% own 80% of everything in the world. That's pretty shocking. So wealth is one way that you can identify different values, and it's a big way around the world that many people rank people or value people, but you don't have to. It's not the only way. This video talks about it. If you're interested in this, I encourage you to check it.
I watched it already.
This idea of companies, which company you're going to work for. A lot of students will target the companies based off of how successful they are. And how successful those companies are usually depends on their financial details. Like the Global 500, the revenues, they're talking about $523 billion for Walmart versus Sinopec, an oil company, State Grid, an electric company, China National Petroleum, again, another oil company. They are number 2, 3, and 4, and number 5 and 6. They're all sort of energy companies, oil and gas companies. Why do people think they're so good and at the top of many listings? Because of their financial success, usually. Even Apple and banking companies are tied into this. So cultures impact you like a hammer. National culture, economic culture, age culture, year, technical. Most important, understand your own culture and then try to understand others. And shockingly, most people don't know their own culture. So let's test that out. Can we have 2 volunteers just to, I want you guys to say, who are you? Identify your culture. And then once you're finished, we're going to get the rest of the class to try to analyze that. Anybody want to identify your culture? Going once. Im Min Gyu, can you tell us, if I am a person from Montreal, Canada, and I don't get around very much, I'm just born and raised and lived in Montreal, Canada, one city in North America, and you just meet me, how can you tell me who you are? What is your culture? So that I would identify you.
I'm from Korea. And
okay, so I don't know what that means. Tell me, what does that mean? What is your culture? Rosie, you're next. So after Im Min Gyu tells us what is Korean culture, then Rosie, can you think about how can you introduce what is your culture? So Im Min Gyu, can you tell me what is Korean culture?
I don't know where to discharge.
Okay, fair enough. Rosie, would you like to try to describe your culture?
Sure, I can try. I'm Finnish. The Finnish people, I guess, typically are quite quiet and private, and they keep to themselves. But once you get to know them, they're very hospitable and honest and just really friendly. And they're very nature aware. They really like their nature and the environment.
So you're from Trois-Rivières, Canada. That sounds like almost every other Canadian I know in Canada around Montreal also. You must be my neighbor. Is that right? Everybody I know likes nature, and my friends are usually quiet also.
I guess there are some similarities in different cultures, but for example, I'm also half UK, from half British, so they aren't as perhaps quiet or private as Finnish people are.
Do you recognize how everything you've just said can be repeated word for word by somebody from a Canadian city or an American city?
Yeah.
Right? So your definition of your culture is still not really describing you yet. It could be anybody from hundreds of cities in many different countries around the world.
Can
So,
I
sorry, I hear somebody asking to try. Yes, go
try?
ahead.
It's Sarika. So it's like, as I'm from Uzbekistan, when you meet us for the first time, like the greeting part is always like really usual, but it's like culture saying that we say assalamu alaikum with our hands, like right hands on our chest, and like I only seen it in Uzbekistan, and it's like a part of our culture. But like if it comes for Korea, they greet by like bowing. So it's like really different types of greetings. And we were like wanted to talk about it in our group project. So yeah, it's like the when you're greeting with Uzbek people, it's mostly like assalamu alaikum, and then like with their hands on their chests,
Great.
like right hand on the chest.
Did I hear you say that you wanted to present? Because many students should be presenting this week, but if you don't speak up, I think you're not interested in presenting. If you want to present, you need to speak up.
Well, Semaj put up the like our first part of the presentation like together, and I saw she already presented, but we have to present today, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't know we were still doing presentations because I didn't want to lecture. That's why I didn't say anything.
I didn't hear. The internet was cutting out. Again, let me repeat. If somebody wants to present, please speak up and tell me you want to start sharing your screen or just start doing it. We can make it.
I'll go ahead and present.
Okay, let me, so who was that? I see Muklisa at the top. Which person?
It's Semaj.
Samaj. I'm trying to find.
Professor Group 6 has to present also.
Well, great, then do it. Whoever wants to share their screen, start speaking and I will allow you to share your screen. Samaj, we're waiting for you to start sharing your screen. Again, okay, if Samaj is not going to present.
Professor, but it's
okay, I'm
4
minutes
minutes
I'm sorry.
left.
Yeah, we have very little time left. Should we present next lesson? It's like 4 minutes left for
each person was, yes, you're supposed to present by speaking up. Try to be proactive. Next class, we don't have a class. Next class is a holiday.
Okay, should I still go ahead or should I stop?
If you're not going to present, I can.
Okay, I can still present. I was just wondering if it would still be okay if I did.
Yes.
Okay. So our topic is the importance of cross-cultural communication and the important aspect in intercultural negotiations. So what exactly is cross-cultural communication? It is a process of recognizing both differences and similarities among culture groups in order to effectively engage within given contexts. And on the flip side, what is intercultural communication? And intercultural communication refers to the communication between people from two different cultures. And intercultural communication is a symbolic, interpretive, transactional, or transtextual process where people from different cultures create shared meanings. So cross-cultural communication versus intercultural communication. So it depends on the focus of the research, but intercultural communication focuses more on interaction with different cultures, whereas cross-cultural communication focuses more on the comparisons of different cultures. So for cross-cultural communication or intercultural communication within businesses, in the business world, so businesses recognize the differences among backgrounds, ethnicities, nations, and how important it is to bridge those together. And because of globalization, being educated in cross-cultural communication and intercultural communication is becoming more important. And for business people who work abroad more often, they have so many differences in material and styles of the countries that they may be visiting in order to be able to communicate effectively when it comes to the negotiations. And there was a study done by the Journal of Applied Psychology, and it says that the effectiveness of your communication with the negotiation counterpart may have a stronger impact in your results in cross-cultural negotiations than it would with a same culture negotiation. So in their study, the researchers looked at the communication quality of Chinese and American personnel that received during assimilation. And the results were able to conclude that the pairs of different cultures came out with worse outcomes than the pairs that were with the same culture. This was due to the low quality of the communication between the two groups. But at the same time, there was a smaller group of different culture personnel who were able to conquer the differences between their communication issues and were able to come out with better, more advanced outcomes than the same culture pairs. And that's all for the introduction.
Great. We're basically finished class. Is there somebody, did I hear, Zarnigar, you said you wanted to share something? One of the things I'm trying to teach is in most of the world that I've worked with, most people are given attention by talking. I understand in Korea that a lot of people are very obedient and they follow other people, but that's not going to help you outside of Korea. So I'm trying to teach you to speak up, teach you to be more proactive. Is there anybody else that wanted to share something with me? Just email it to me or give me the link to understand before you guys are gone for the holiday.
Professor?
Yeah,
Professor, I'm sorry, Sanigor. Group 6 are ready to present, but it's out of time. So can we present now? And if student wants, they can leave.
Absolutely, every student can leave. I'm going to stay around lots longer. Nobody has to stay along, but it would be best to make sure your information is presented. At least email it to the teaching team. And as we move forward throughout the semester, be proactive, speak up. Rosie, you said that Finnish people are usually very quiet and humble. Great, but for you to have international success, nobody else is going to promote you except you. So you need to speak up. Does that seem fair, Rosie?
Yeah, I just didn't want to get in the middle of your teaching, so I didn't say anything. I'm in group 6 as well, so I was waiting for an opportunity to mention that we need to present, but
good.
I didn't want to interrupt.
I work for you guys, right? You guys are the boss. With that said, Min Jung Kim, you said that you wanted to present, but you're not now. I am going to continue talking until you tell me to shut up. Kim Gong Jung, he told me to shave my mustache to be more respected. I was starting to do that. What else do I need to be more respected and have you guys listen to me?
Professor, I wanted to tell you that like I am in the same group with Samaj. It's Sanigar speaking.
Okay.
Yeah, so like she presented everything that they prepared for now.
Okay. Okay, guys, I guess nobody else is going to present. Have a good holiday. I can keep talking about things. Min Jung Kim, I heard you say you wanted to present, but you're not actually doing it. I have given you the ability to share your screen and you're being quiet.
No, we
can't
will
help you much more.
Rosie and Tobias and me are in the same group. So yeah, can we present now?
I already said yes. We're waiting for you to talk. Speak up. Start presenting. Start talking. Minjun Kim, you have the ability to share your screen now.
No,
Please.
Tobias has our PPT presentation, so he will share his screen.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll upload it in CCC, but I can share anyway. Yeah. Just give me a second.
Anybody else want to present while we're waiting? You guys, you don't need to stay behind as long as you show me some of your details. I would be able to take a look at it. One of the good ways to show how each person has presented details, as I said in the first week of class, is just to highlight what you have created in the file in your color, and your other group mates highlight what they've created in a different color.
Sorry, my Zoom is just messed up. I don't know why it doesn't.
Is there anybody else in your group that
I uploaded it? I uploaded it in the presentation into our shared folder. So, but should work now. It does work now. No, I had to give the yeah. So.
Okay, so our topic is the changing nature and relationship of employee loyalty and satisfaction in the United Kingdom and South Korea. Employee loyalty has been seen recently as an old-fashioned concept and one that no longer fits the current employment sector. People definitely see that like employee loyalty is a changing concept. People no longer equate it simply with the company paying for the employee's salary. And it has evolved more to focus on the employee satisfaction and the employer-employee relationship. Research conducted by the Workforce Survey has found that 80% of respondents believe the concept of employee loyalty has changed over the years, and employees are now more focused on the benefits they can get from the company and the way the company sees their financial well-being and how they care about that as being more so a part of the employee loyalty as opposed to just being paid salary. In the simplest form, employee loyalty is the passive, constructive, and psychological contract the employee has with the company. This includes the long-term retention of employees, regardless of the perceived image of the company, the keeping of loyal legal obligations, and the formation of positive outlook of the company. Culture has a drastic impact on the workplace culture of companies, as different cultures have very different priorities and manners and societal expectations put on them. And these largely affect the workplace and the way they see employee loyalty and how they are loyal to their company. This is especially prevalent when it comes to quote unquote Western and Eastern countries, as they have very different cultures in the workplace. And this is why we chose to focus on South Korea and the United Kingdom, because they have very different workplace cultures as seen in the Hofstede research. Cultural differences play a significant role in business success, for example. Like if they are trying to break into a new market, they have to take into consideration the differences between Eastern and Western cultures, as they can be very different, not only the employees, but also the consumers of the product. Businesses continue to go global, opening offices in new countries and having to adjust to new cultures, not only to satisfy local consumers, but also the local workforce. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a new opportunity to hire more internationally, as people are working from home now. So you can potentially work from an entirely different country. And this has given them opportunity to hire new people for different benefits, and it's a lot easier this time around. And as a result of this, in order to gain employee loyalty and satisfaction on an international level, the manner in which culture affects the way a company should approach these matters is an important one, which is why we've chosen to research it as our topic. The COVID-19 pandemic has put further importance on the way companies treat their employees regarding health and the benefits they gain when restrictions were put on the workplace. And research found strong correlations between the way in which the company dealt with the pandemic and the way they treated their employees and with employee retention. This further supports the changes happening in the within employee priorities, and employees look further into the company instead of just their salaries, for example, the way they were treated during the pandemic. And this also further amplifies the importance of research, showing how different cultures perceive employee loyalty.
Awesome. You guys have presented far more than was required. Thank you very much. I also note that with your research, you have many different research files already, more files than almost anybody else in the class. So great. One thing that you haven't talked about is when you are giving the references of information, when you're communicating this stuff, try to communicate what stuff is the valuable, respected stuff internationally, and what stuff is just the popular information that's being discussed now. But thank you. You guys did a great job. Again, all you needed to do was just show the introduction. So thanks. Is there anything else I can help you guys with this?
I don't have any questions at the minute that I can think of.
When you guys do present your...
Excuse me, I have to go. My landlord just knocked at my door. I'm very sorry. We have to...
Yeah, class is finished. You guys don't need to stay...
Hopefully everything's fine.
Great. Bye. Have a good holiday, guys.
Have a good... Thank you.
I actually could ask the references. You said they had to be Scopus articles, but do they have to be exclusively from that website? Because I was using my home university's library as well.
That's perfect. You do not have to only use Scopus. Scopus is not from just one university. Scopus is the world's most reliable information anywhere. There's Finnish journals, there's German journals, American journals, whatever. It's just saying it is respected. And so what I was saying is when you present, you need to make sure that some of your information is respected and reliable, period.
Okay.
Scopus is an example.
Yeah, all right, okay, that's good. And the way we reference, is there like a style of referencing you use? Because my university has its entirely own referencing style, the Robert Gordon version, so.
The most popular is with the APA style, but during week one, I was saying it would be ideal, it would be best if you could find one journal article that your team really, really loves, and then try to replicate that style and format. So if you find an article that you really like and you want to make something similar to that, follow that same referencing style.
Okay.
Otherwise, for all social science courses, APA is the most popular referencing style.
All right, thank you.
Any questions from you, Min Jung Kim?
I did some of the literature review, and should we finish that like until week 3, until this week? I mean,
literature review is not required this week. Literature review is the background. That's required in week 5.
Okay. Thank you. That's my question.
Okay. Happy Chuseok, guys.
Yeah. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.